Cool.
Awesome. Well, thank you for being here.
Of course, thank you for having me.
So, Mikey or Michael, which one do you prefer?
Either one's fine. I'm indifferent. I'll respond to any form of my name.
Okay. Do you want to tell us your full name?
Yes, my full legal name is Michael David Martinez Jr.
What about the prefix?
Oh yes, Dr. Michael Martinez Jr. I always forget about the doctor, even though it took 5 years to get that little 2 letters in front of my name.
Yeah, so thank you. Thank you for coming on to the Embodiment Project. As you know, here we are talking about all the things that might be a little uncomfortable to talk about, but I think it's important to get into these topics because if we are on an embodiment journey, meaning trying to feel what we feel and really be in our bodies rather than like being out of our bodies, dissociating, being in our mind a lot where we're not able to really experience life. I think that it in a way, it keeps us from fully experiencing our wholeness. And so here, I'm hoping that today we can get into a little bit about your story and what makes you whole. So tell us, what is alive for you right now?
Yeah, so for me, I don't know, a lot. You know, right now the major focus for me has been really my own healing journey, to be honest, you know, of, you know, repairing, you know, that generational trauma that I have kind of picked up, you know, as we all do in our lives, and also trying to be the best parent and partner that I can be, and trying to be as present as I can be as well.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So when you mention presence, what does presence look like for you?
For me, presence means that there is not only just joy, but also the willingness to do things like this, you know, have these difficult conversations. You know, it's these difficult conversations and it's the joy, you know, that comes with living life and enjoying life that I feel really makes up, you know, adulthood and just our ability to be able to enjoy life.
Yeah. So, I forgot to ask you before, but what are your preferred pronouns?
Oh, my preferred pronouns are he, him.
Okay, perfect. So, congratulations on being the first person who uses he, him pronouns on this podcast. I haven't had any men, so it's really cool. It's really exciting to hear your point of view. And also, as you bring all of this knowledge and information from your background as a clinical
psychologist.
As a clinical psychologist, because I think that you can bring a unique perspective to the topics we're going to get into today surrounding healing through relationships. And so tell us, what is one of the first most influential relationships you had in your childhood? Yes,
I think the first most influential relationship I had in my childhood was easily hands down my grandma. You know, I grew up in a single parent household. And of course, even though my mom was around, my mom was like 16 or 17 when she had me, you know, a child herself, you know. And of course I don't remember, but, you know, I did hear stories growing up that, you know, after my mom had me, that the first year she continued to kind of do her teenage thing and going out, having fun with her friends. And I, of course, like no way fault her in that, you know, she was 17. But with that, you know, my grandma was the primary caregiver of my first year, essentially. Not to say that my mom didn't do anything, but my grandma was there to kind of like watch me and do all the stuff, which ensure my mom was as well. But my grandma was the first one, and I think she has always been there to really support me and to be my protector and to educate me and teach me how to navigate life.
That's so beautiful. So you're a grandma and your mom.
Yes,
in some ways, yeah,
definitely.
Oh, that's beautiful. I love that. And something that comes up for me a lot when I'm talking to people about influential relationships and their upbringing, it's often the mother that I hear is taking the lead with raising the child, or not, but in your case, not just the mother, but the females, the women,
yes.
the femmes, the caretakers, you know. And something that really intrigues me about you and your relationships is that you are married to a man.
Yes.
And so I'm curious to know what it's like as you're navigating a family, really, when so many of us have seen like gender roles take precedence, where the woman is the one who, you know, cooks and cleans and takes care of the kids in the house, and then the man is the breadwinner. But obviously things are changing, and we know that families are not just men and women. You know, there's so many ways to have a family. Myself, my family consists of me, my daughter, and my mom, and my sister, and my closest, you know, relatives. But within our home, it's really just me and my daughter, and my mom who lives next door. So, but in this case, I think we've intentionally made that choice, you know, to take on the role of the caregivers, and knowing that there's not going to be a man around to help pick up, you know, the slack or help out or provide support. So tell us about your relationship and your family now, and how your upbringing has influenced how you are as a parent and a partner.
Yeah, definitely. The interesting thing about my experience growing up is I already felt that like you were talking about, that experience of growing outside the traditional makeup of a family. You know, at home was my grandma, who was a primary caregiver. She was there when I was there after school, cooking, cleaning, doing laundry, you know, the traditional, you know, femme gender roles, you know. Whereas my mom, she was the breadwinner. She would go to work, she would work overnights, you know, and she would come bring home the money. And to this day, she was like, I bring home the bacon, I don't make the bacon. You know, she stays steadfast in that, and I'm proud of her for doing that. So I feel like I had a unique experience growing up, because it was like, even though obviously my grandma and mom aren't like romantically involved, like it was like almost like having, you know, two moms, you know. So for me, when you know, I married my husband, or even just got in a relationship with my husband, he already had 3 kids. So I felt like I was already primed to be in a relationship, or understand that families can have different dynamics and different things, and have a different makeup than traditional man and woman that we see everywhere.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
yeah, go ahead.
And with that, I think that has really influenced how we interact. You know, and I'm not going to say that we don't fall into our own gender roles sometimes. You know, I think since I grew up in a household full of women and raised by femmes, that, you know, I tend to take on those gender roles a little bit more, because that's what I've seen, and they feel a little bit more comfortable for me. So, you know, I tend to kind of take up more of the cooking, more of the laundry, more of the cleaning up around the house. Of course, not to say that my husband doesn't help, but we're out, you know, but, you know, I think I tend to kind of take those on a little bit more. But I think what is the benefit of having kind of this same-sex relationship is that there is this, hey, like if I need help, and I'm like, hey, like, can you do this? Can you do that? Like, there isn't this like defense or this, oh, I don't do that. That's not what I do. You know, it's more of this acceptance of like, yes, you need help and assistance. Let's do that.
Yeah, I love that. I definitely see that between you guys in your relationship, and it's really admirable, because I feel like if we were to toss gender roles aside, that is what a relationship looks like, right? It's equitable. It's like you help when you can, and I help when I can, and if we need help, we're not afraid to ask, and it's not personal. We don't get our feelings hurt. It's just like, that's what you do. And I think the same is true for non-romantic relationships, right? Like friendships and even chosen family. Do you have chosen family that helped you become who you are today?
Oh, definitely. Like, I think throughout my college years, you know, I had that steadfast group of friends, you know, my roommate, you know, his partner, some other people that I grew close to and had that attachment to. And also my best friend, who I've known since high school. You know, we always joke that she, you know, she didn't go to college with me to do classes, she partied with us. So so she's been like playing an integral part of my life, and for her in particular, I think she's really been there to help me, you know, in my coming out process and helping me make sense of my sexuality, and to be there to give that support in those tough times. Same thing as those college friends, those college roommates that I had. And those are people that I've chosen to continue to have relationships with and continue. And I think that have showed me like this this unconditional regard and accepting who I am and not really questioning it. Because when I was in college, I wasn't out. I was in the closet, and when I started bringing boyfriends over, like they didn't even like flinch at it. They're like, okay, you know, they didn't ask questions. They just accepted it. And I think that is the beauty of having a chosen family, is that there isn't necessarily that sometimes underlining toxicity under it. You know, like there's a certain level of expectations that come with your biological family sometimes.
Yeah. And how does your biological family feel about your chosen family? Is there any like competition there?
You know, I don't think so. I hope not. You know, I do think there's maybe some concern of, I think when I got to college, it came very much, you know, I wanted I lived in the dorms, so I was around, you know, my chosen family a lot more often. And ever since then, that's kind of been the fact in the case is being around friends more often than my biological family.
Yeah.
But, you know, surprisingly, we haven't had that conversation. Maybe that'll be something I need to address.
With your family?
Yeah.
Yeah. The reason I ask is because I know that for me, like, I grew up around a lot of friends, and their families would often take me in as like a surrogate child, you know, like they'd feed me, I'd spend the night, like, and it wasn't because, I mean, things were hard growing up, especially when my parents were still together. It was a very violent marriage, but I wasn't like going to my friends' houses to get away from home necessarily. I just felt more comfortable. I felt like there weren't as many questions that needed to be answered. And like you said, like they didn't judge me, you know. A lot of my friends and their families took me in and loved me for who I was. And so with my family, I think my family also loves me for who I am. And the more I work through intergenerational healing, the more I become more comfortable being myself around everyone, being more authentic and really showing people who I am, the more that the closer we get. But there's always this I don't know, maybe it's like in my own head, but it's like this voice that says like family comes first, right? Because that's what we're taught. It's like family comes first. Nothing is more important than your family. You do whatever they say whenever you can, and that's how it goes. But in my experience with chosen family, sometimes I would choose my friends over my family. You know, sometimes what they were experiencing, I needed to be there for them through, and sometimes there aren't things that I could have done for my family to be there for them. There's, you know, it's not my fight all the time. So that's why I was asking, because no one's ever explicitly said like, hey, you're always like hanging out with your friends and not enough time with your family. But I kind of feel it, you know, I feel that energy, that guilt of like, oh, you're paying more attention to your friends than your family. And it's like, it's really hard for, I think, my family to understand that chosen family is just as important as blood family because of the toxicity, because sometimes that's our safety is our chosen family.
Yeah, definitely. And you know, I have to give my family credit, because I think they really come from the stance of understanding that when you become adult, you decide who you want to spend your time with, you know, and I think they do have a major effort in trying not to guilt. But that doesn't mean that I still don't experience that guilt. Like if you were to ask my partner, there's still kind of this underlining guilt of like, oh, I don't see them enough. I don't call them enough. And I think that's even more apparent because my partner's is really close to his family. Like we live down the street from them, so you know they're here more often. You know, they call more often. And I think for me, when we first started dating, it was like, oh man, like, is something wrong with me that I don't want to see my family or talk to my family that much? It's not that I don't love them. It's just like, I don't know, like, I think I've been so focused on developing myself and developing my career. Like, it's kind of like things have been all like in shambles and scattered. And now that I'm kind of established, it's like looking around and seeing what's kind of around is kind of like, oh, like it's a bit different than probably what people thought it would be, you know?
Yeah. That's so interesting how it's, you know, it's different for everyone. And how like experiencing someone else's family can make you feel like, why don't I have this with my family, you know? For me, that the reason is because a lot of times I'm re-traumatized by things, or I'm triggered by things that they say or do, and so that's why I retreat and go do my own thing, because like you, I'm going through my own healing journey. And sometimes that requires us to be alone, you know? It's not any offense to anyone in our family particular, but it's kind of like when you're healing, you're tender, you're sensitive, you're again, like going back to embodiment, if you can get deep into the core wounds, it's painful.
It is.
You know? And then to like be around people who might like say something offensive or that might bother you or hurt you, it's amplified 100 times, you know? So what has that been like for you in your own healing journey?
Yeah, for me, I think, you know, it wasn't too far in the past, like actually last summer, where, you know, me and my family got into this disagreement, and I think that has created kind of this need for space for us, you know, and that really happened because when I was getting married, you know, I invited a certain important family member. I wanted to call her up and ask her personally, because there was just that feeling, just that intuition of like, I need to do this in person, you know, or over the phone, because there's just something about it, or that hesitance, or that kind of like, what's their response going to be, you know? Like, there's just something intuitively I knew that I had to make that phone call. Yeah. And, you know, when I made the phone call, you know, she said she couldn't come to my wedding because it was a gay wedding, and that was really devastating for me, because you know, she has always, I even got chills as I said it, you know? You know, because talk about embodiment, right? Yeah. Just acknowledge that little tinge. You know, because she was someone that was always there for me, you know. She always called me like her practice son before she had her own family, and to kind of have that sort of rejection was devastating to me. And the issue and problem that, you know, happened for us with my family was that they really didn't understand or see that as a rejection. And they still quite don't. And even though we've had several conversations about it, like I decided that isn't something that I necessarily need them to acknowledge. And that was a tough pill to swallow. And I think it was something that I had to learn to accept and be okay, and try to figure out like, what is this going to look like now? What is our relationship going to look like now? And I think, you know, on top of that, I think I've always had some trust issues, you know, from my own childhood trauma, you know, and I think for me, as someone who doesn't remember a lot of their childhood, it's really fuzzy, you know, it's really, you know, blacked out almost. Like I feel like it seems like something's always tender, you know, because there's always this moment where I feel like I have to kind of like grieve the fact that I don't have a childhood. Even though I did, I don't have memory of it. And that's a really unique experience I feel I have. Yeah. And I think in doing my degree and doing like continuing education after I graduated, like I've come to terms with that during that time frame that I don't remember. It was really me disassociating from the overwhelm that was in my house. You know, there was a lot of chaos in that time, and of course, like maybe someone else seeing it wouldn't perceive it as chaos, but obviously my nervous system did, and it really worked in protecting me by disassociating. So you know, dissociation for me was a way to kind of cope and survive during that troubled time. Like, you know, I at that time there was my little brothers were being born, my mom was about to get married to their dad, he didn't necessarily want me around, and we lived with an uncle who was addicted to drugs, and I saw, everything, him coming down, him in the midst of a high, the aggression, the anger, the violence, like, it was a lot. And I look back, and it wasn't until recent, actually, I was at the gym working out, and like, I guess just being present in my body and moving and stretching and doing something, it was just like, damn, like, you were overwhelmed as a kid, and that's why you don't remember a lot of it,
Dang, it came to you like that?
Yeah, just in the gym, being present in my body and kind of moving it. And I think, and it's so true that, that trauma is stored in your body, and sometimes it, a movement can really kind of click things in place,
Yeah.
Obviously not as simple as that, but
Yeah, but sometimes it is like that. It's like it's like a download, like, oh, this happened. Yeah. And I think too, when we're open to it, right?
Yes.
Like when we're not suppressing anymore, we allow those memories to come back. I'm just curious, like, have you asked your family about your childhood, like to try to recollect what you experienced, or is that not like an open conversation you've had with them?
We've had conversations. Yeah, we have conversations. I think it happened when I was, in my mid-20s. After I finished grad school, I moved back in for a bit, and I think it happened around that time. Or was it middle? It happened somewhere around there in my mid-20s. But it was essentially just, them apologizing, them really acknowledging for the harm that I was put in, and really taking accountability for that piece. And I think that's where, I love that and I appreciate that, but I think I still have a long way and a journey to at that time, I still had a long journey to kind of regain that trust that was kind of lost, because I feel like it was a lot to have someone that you really care about kind of, break that relationship or break that trust, or put you in situations that were harmful. It's like you're the protector, and that's not necessarily happening in those moments.
Yeah. So something that you and I have talked a lot about is attachment. And I'm curious to know how your own upbringing influences your work as a psychologist, as a clinical, I keep forgetting the word.
Clinical psychologist?
Clinical psychologist.
Yeah.
How does your life experience, play into your work?
Definitely. I feel given, my own traumas and what I've been through, I tend to kind of have this hyper focus on attachment, actually. And I don't think it's necessarily an issue, but it's definitely something for me to be aware of. But I think I bring attachment in very often to my sessions, because most people are coming into therapy because of relationships. That there's like a meme on Instagram of like people come into therapy for people who won't go to therapy, right?
Oh my God.
Right?
So true.
And I think that it is so true. Like every client that comes into session, there's always someone in their life, or they're always trying to navigate some sort of social relationship or heal some sort of trauma. And most often traumas happen in relationships, and I see a lot of relational trauma in sessions. So I think I always tend to kind of go back to figure out those childhood roots and understand those, and to kind of do that inner child work, because that's kind of what's needed. And I think the one thing Freud got right was kind of like understanding that caregivers are the foundation to the rest of your relationships for the rest of your life, and I think and that's why it's so important to kind of address and talk about those times. Yeah.
I feel like all of the work we're doing, it always goes back to the child, the inner child, the childhood experience, because like you said, that's when we're learning from our models, how to navigate conflict, how to navigate again, that equity, right? That sharing of a space, the communication, like all the things it takes to be in community with someone.
Yeah, regulating yourself.
Yeah, it's so interesting. And it's interesting the way that things can shift, you know, when you are getting really into those dark places that, again, a lot of us suppress because it is painful and it is hard. But an example I wanted to share was just a couple minutes ago before I came over here. I was feeling frustrated because I had all this stuff I was carrying and I was carrying it all by myself. And I realized I forgot something before I stepped out of the door with all my stuff. So I went to put it back down, but I was frustrated. So I like started dropping stuff because I was just like holding all my stuff. And then, so I threw it on the chair, and then I think I even threw like something down, or maybe it fell, but it didn't help that I had, you know, thrown it. And I felt myself getting agitated, you know, it's nobody's fault. It was my own frustration of just like, oh, I have all this stuff and now I have to go back. Just a minor thing, you know, but my little one's there watching me, watching how I deal with this stress, with this frustration, with this, you know, just the fact that I have to go back and the whole thing. And as I'm leaving the room to go catch my breath and like regulate myself, I see her going to pick up the stuff that I dropped. And I told her, don't pick it up. It's okay. I'm angry, but not at anyone. I'm angry with myself. I'm frustrated because I'm running late. I have all this stuff. Like, there's all these things, you know? And I said, just leave it there. I'll pick it up when I'm ready to come back, you know? And that's a big step for us. You know what I mean? Because I won't lie, like, it's so crazy how easy it is for us to blame kids for everything. You know, like, oh, like, just for whatever reason, we just blame stuff on them because it's easy to do. And that's something we're working on, you know, we're working on like taking responsibility for when we are the cause of what is happening versus when we're not. And maybe it's just a freak accident. Maybe, you know, it was a dog. I don't know. It doesn't really even matter whose fault it is. What matters is that we reconnect and we repair when we have a rupture, and we connect heart to heart again. And, you know, but again, that's not something I was ever modeled. You know, what was modeled for me was more like aggression, violence, and frustration, and then, okay, let's pretend it never happened and just move on.
Yeah, definitely. And I think, you know, kind of speaking on that, my childhood and growing up, I think when I became a parent, and I feel like the interesting thing about my journey to become a parent is that, like, I made the conscious choice. This is what I was going to do. You know, my partner already had 3 kids, and I knew I was getting into. And, you know, I think there was definitely some reservation, like, am I ready for this? Like, is this what I want? You know, and I think that when I met them and interacted with them, I was like, yes, I can do this, you know. And I think once I started feeling comfortable enough to parent, because I will admit that when I first came in, I didn't want to be that, like, step parent that was telling them what to do. I took the role of very much of, like, let's have fun, let's get to know each other, let's build relationship before I take on that part of parenting, which is discipline, you know? And for me, that was really important. And as we developed that relationship, I made an effort that, as I took on that role of disciplining, that I was going to treat them the way I wanted to be treated as a child, you know? And I think that was a big effort to heal my own inner child and to be mindful that I didn't want to repeat mistakes and to break that generational trauma pattern, you know? And I think that's really worked wonders for us.
Yeah. Oh, so beautiful. I mean, it's a simple concept, right? Like it's like one of the golden rules, right? Like treat people the way you want to be treated. but it's easier said than done, especially with children, because there's this power dynamic. But I think it's wonderful. And I've seen you with your family. You know, you guys are so loving and so communicative, and you can tell that is coming into fruition. Like, you've already been doing that, you know.
Thank you. So affirming.
Yeah, it's beautiful. Okay, well, this is the segment. We're going to switch over into our rapid fire segment.
Yeah.
Do you remember?
Yes.
Okay.
I do.
Okay, so I'm going to ask you a series of questions in 1 minute.
Okay.
These are going to be questions that are related to your highest self. So what is the highest self? To me, the highest self is the part of you that is most whole. So we talked a little bit about embodiment and how, like, these traumatic situations can, I don't think we explicitly said it, but my understanding of this in my own experience is that when we experience trauma, we chip away at our spirit and our soul, our true essence, because a lot of times the trauma, it affects the way that we feel, especially the way we feel about ourselves, right?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. What trauma really does is it disconnects us from our body, from our feelings, you know, because, you know, though during those moments our bodies and feelings are just too overwhelming. So that is where kind of like, that's how it kind of chips away our soul. But our soul is made up of feelings, of experiences, of felt sense of embodiment. So in those moments, like, your body's just like, nope, we can't do this. So it disconnects, and your body kind of has that disconnection, kind of like where I disassociated for most of my childhood. Like, you know, the feelings are disconnected, you know, the recording of memories disconnected.
So what I want to do in this side is to kind of remind us who our higher selves are, I'm kind of moving away from the highest self, because I don't want it to sound like everything else is like bad or low vibration, you know? But really, it is about energy. It's about, like, when you are whole, you vibrate at a higher frequency, literally.
Most authentic.
Yes. So that's your highest self. Okay. So with that said, and also this is part of the inner child work too, right? Having fun, enjoying this game, and just getting some laughs. So I'm going to go ahead and ask you the questions. I'm going to put 1 minute on the clock. Okay. And then you just answer the first thing that comes to your mind. Okay. Okay. So I'm going to wait for it to come around, and then we'll start. Okay. What is your highest self's favorite song to dance to?
Oh, Spice Up My Life by Spice Girls.
Yes! Okay, which Spice Girl are you?
Oh, I love Baby.
Yeah?
Yeah, I love Baby Spice.
I love it. Okay, what is your highest self's favorite childhood book?
Lion, Witch, and the Wardrobe. No, Magician's Nephew, actually.
What is it?
Magician's Nephew.
Oh, is that like the third one or the fourth one?
That is the first book, where it tells how Narnia was created.
Oh, because Narnia was the second one.
Yeah, Lion, Witch, and Wardrobe was the second one. Yeah.
Very cool. Yeah. Okay. What is your highest self's favorite thing to do with your partner?
Ooh.
You can give us all the juicy details.
Right. I think just being present with each other and enjoying each other's company, and even though it sounds really it's like just staring in his eyes sometimes is just all I need. Yeah.
Oh, that's perfect. That's a perfect way to end that minute. And it's not it's beautiful. I love it.
I know, see, that's my trauma. It's like, feelings.
No, but see, like, that's your truth. And that's why we do this, because it's unscripted, and it's what comes from your heart. And it's beautiful. Oh, I love you guys so much.
Oh, I love you.
And I'm really grateful that you were willing to come talk to me and be so radically transparent about your personal life and your work and your partnership and your relationships. And I do want to thank you for the work you're doing in the community too, because I know that you do a lot of, like, volunteer work, and you're on different podcasts and radio stations and stuff talking about good stuff. So let folks know where they can find you, where they can follow you, and how to stay in touch. And if there's any resources you want to share for folks to do more work around this, let us know.
Of course, of course. I don't have like a official like professional Instagram, but if you wanted to add me or chat or have any questions, feel free to add me on Instagram. It is Mikail013, so MIKIAL013. So feel free to DM me if you have any questions or any topics you'd like to address. Maybe that'll be the lift off to my own professional page.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
And any resources?
Yeah, one resource I think is really great, and we've actually worked with them. I've actually did like a little online seminar with them too, right? Like I did Latinx parenting. It's a great resource for working on ending chancla culture and ending generational trauma, and also doing seminars on nonviolent parenting. So I think that if you want to, heal that inner child, I think the great way is to kind of go through that and kind of understand what was okay and not okay, and then implement it into your life. You can use those same tools to reparent yourself and heal that inner child as well. So check out Latinx Parenting. I really enjoy what they do and what they stand for.
Yeah, shout out to Latinx Parenting. They're good friends of ours, and we're so happy that they're doing the work and we're doing it with them.
Yes.
So yeah, awesome. Okay, well, thank you, Michael.
Of course.
It was great.
Oh, sorry, Michael. You're good.
I'm sure we'll be chatting again soon on here, and we'll talk about some more good stuff.
Sounds good.
Right.
Yay! I felt like we could have talked like for hours.
I know. That's why it's so hard to keep it